This podcast is brought to you by the Association for Coaching, the world's leading international professional body which is advancing coaching in business and society worldwide. I'm your host, Rob Lawrence, and in this new series, we are celebrating 20 years of the Association for Coaching by reflecting upon the journey so far. I meet with founders, coaches, leaders and members who contributed to the AC's journey to learn more about their experiences with coaching as part of our global community. Together we explore the impact that coaching has had on the world so far, what we need to be thinking about for the future to create more positive change whilst tackling some of the world's biggest challenges. Each week, you'll hear how coaches are working and collaborating as a global community together to advance coaching worldwide. Hello and welcome to the final episode celebrating 20 years of the Association for Coaching. Today I have with me the Global CEO and the AC co-founder, Katherine Tulpa, as well as the Area Chair for the UK, Africa and India, Gina Lodge. Hello both.
Hello Rob.
Hello Rob.
Hello Gina.
Hello Katherine.
Great to have you both with me today. I'm very excited about this conversation and I can't believe that we're already at the end of this series celebrating 20 years of the Association for Coaching. I'm looking forward to checking in with you and learning more about where the AC is going from this point forward, perhaps over the next 20 years. And I'm also curious as to, what you've learned over the last year and during the course of this series, where we've heard so many different voices from so many different countries around the globe. It's really been a wonderful experience to celebrate the global community that forms the Association for Coaching. So I'd like to begin perhaps maybe with you, Gina, because Katherine, you were with me on the first episode for this series. But Gina, it'd be great just to give more of a background for our listener as to how you got involved with the AC and how the AC became part of your journey now that you're the area chair for the UK, Africa and India.
Yes, thank you, Rob. I've had, I suppose, two main careers. One was with Shell International, my sort of first career. And I think that's where I first really it was pre sort of the coaching world, really. And so, but I was always fascinated in leadership. For the last 14 years, I've worked for the Academy of Executive Coaching, AOEC, a global coach training company. So that was really my introduction to coaching. And I worked as a marketing director and for the last 7 years as the CEO. It's a founder-owned company. And I also qualified as a coach in that time, not surprisingly, working for a coaching company. So that's where I suppose, entered the coaching arena and also then discovered the AC. Looking back, I was completely sort of immersed in the coaching world and I found it absolutely fascinating and really sort of looked at it as it's really a chance for change. It's a chance to change people, the way that they relate to each other in the workplace, and all sorts of opportunities come up, I think, and it changes people. You see the change in people. So I loved the coaching industry, and then one of the ethos of the AOEC was to go for accreditation, actually with three main accrediting bodies. But I was always fascinated with the AC because it just seemed different. It seemed as if it had a real passion, not just for coaching, but for people as well. Then what happened, Katherine contacted me, I think it was at the end of 2020, and asked if I would be interested in building the UK AC, the UK chapter. And actually a great conversation. So I really appreciated, Katherine asking. And the more we talked, I thought this is a really exciting opportunity because you don't often in any business get the chance to build a team, a leadership team from the ground up. Again, true to form, Katherine has always been very generous and I love the style of this is what I'm asking you to do, but then carry on and do it. And I'm here if it's a classic model of good leadership, really, because you don't actually ask someone to do something and then do it yourself, which a lot of leaders do, or they, So I really just wanted to say I really appreciated the support I've had in building the team from everybody at the AC. Now, building the team was very exciting. So I accepted. That's how I actually got more involved in the AC. And I was still working at AOEC then, and I've left recently. But what was really unique is in building that team, you don't have to follow norms. And one of the things I really like about the AC is it's very future thinking and very flexible. So it's not stuck in the past. It's always looking to how can we improve, but how can we make things better, and listening. So really embodying the coaching philosophy, really. So I set about building a team. We have now built the team, and we have this fantastic team of people. But what we've done is bring in some sort of future thinking roles in the leadership team. So we've got technology and innovation on the team as someone looking after that specifically. We've got the future leaders, the next generation. Who are they? How are the coaches of the future going to be? Social conscience, which includes all aspects of DEI, climate change, sustainability generally. So they were all things that we knew were around and were really becoming important for all leadership teams to look at. So why not actually put them on the leadership team? So that was really exciting. And the people just saying, yes, these are all voluntary roles. We've got an absolutely amazing group of people working together in all of these roles and more. We've got membership engagement and storytelling. So not just looking at marketing. It makes marketing sound a little dull. Apologies to all marketeers out there. No judgment. And really then we've got all the sort of conventional roles. So we've got the membership and accreditation and the corporate development, organisational development, working with the coaching schools and universities, etc. So we've got the core, but we've also got a lot of creativity and future thinking built into the team. So that sort of brings us more up to date now. And the next stage is we're building building on the African and the India situation, sort of in terms of growth.
Lots of exciting stuff to get stuck into there today in our conversation, Gina. And you mentioned the flexibility of the Association for Coaching and you allude to its future thinking capacity, which is something that's been very evident, I've felt, in this series alone. Katherine, I'm curious, before we get into talking about the future, how did you meet Gina? Can you remember that moment in your life and how your relationship has evolved from there?
Yes, absolutely. Well, firstly, with the organization that Gina was CEO of, they had been Academy Executive Coaching. They had been a long-standing member of the AC from early on. So as you do when you're starting, they were based in the UK as when we started 20 years ago. We were also in the UK. So some of the founder, John Larry Joyce, he had run a number. We asked him to come and do some talks and things like that. So they've always been a supporter of the AC, which we appreciated. So certainly when we had heard of Gina's proactivity, and always when reaching out to Gina was always so collaborative. I think what struck me whenever we're looking for any kind of regional team member, especially someone to look to lead the team, values. You probably heard Alex and I speaking on that first series, how important it is for us to build a coaching culture within our community, being a coaching body. And Gina always struck me from every touch point from what I was hearing of her through others as well, which is always a perfect testament to anyone, was how collaborative she was and a really fine example of leadership. So I just wanted to say the same thing, Gina. And I had heard so much about her. And also the school as well was very reputable. So those kind of things, it really is an opportunity to have a conversation. And we very much clicked from there, haven't we, Gina?
Yes, we absolutely did, Katherine. Yes.
Great. So let's start looking to the future then. We've covered a lot of ground in the last 10 episodes or so, celebrating 20 years of the Association for Coaching. I'd love to begin with you, Katherine, in terms of where we are today and, how is the AC thinking about positioning ourselves going into the future? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, what I also would like to say is, listened in. It was really lovely to listen into the rest of the podcast series with so many of the regional chairs and leadership teams, different members of the AC across the globe speaking about coaching in their side of the world and what's important and what they really value within the AC. And you probably have got this listening to many of the series now, Rob, within the series, was very much what was coming out, as you would have heard, is the AC's emphasis around the leader coach. So really where the AC continues to go is we really, really want to see coaching continue to advance in business in all its forms. So for us, coaching is very much moving, continue. We want to have a role in playing to see coaching advance across business and what that brings. So the whole area around the leader coach, and we're seeing great traction come in from that, is very much one of the areas of focus for us. And Gina, for you, in the area of kind of, if we stay on more of the corporate side of things, because that is certainly where we're putting a lot of our emphasis. What would you like to say about that?
Oh gosh, so yes, so I think that on the corporate side, I think this is a huge growth area for the future for coaching. And when you look at online, you see how many conversations there are about leadership and how organizations need to go forward now. And it sounds like a whole revolution is needed. And already a lot of companies have been putting coaching in as a new leadership style and a new way of actually just engaging together in a company. So I think what we see is going to be an onward growth trajectory for coaching, is that it is going to become the leadership style of the future. It already is in a lot of companies. And to see that acceleration of corporations taking up coaching and coach training, it's phenomenal at the moment. It's just everywhere. And I can remember not so many years ago when you'd go to an event or something that had nothing to do with coaching, and people would say, "Oh, what do you do?" And you'd remember, you'd mention coaching, and not so many people had heard of it. Now it's everywhere. And that's not just in the UK, of course, that's global. It doesn't matter who you talk to. People know coaching, they know coaches or different types of coaches. And I think it's also it is and has become more and more of an intelligent organisation. And what I mean by intelligent organisation is it's the standards, and that's why AC are so relevant in this as well, but the standards of coaching and the community. So people need community. And if you've got individual coaches training and going out in the world, they might have, probably most executive coaches have worked in a corporation of some kind. But then to find that you're a coach, self-employed, suddenly, oh, I'm a coach, but now I've got to set my own business up, and they haven't got a community necessarily. So I think organisations, particularly like AC, provide that community. So it's having ongoing learning and a home. So I think I look at AC as a home for a lot of coaches, newly qualified or seasoned coaches, to carry on learning together, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I mean, that's really a core value, which I was really pleased hearing about and consistently, is when we have always set ourselves up, from the get-go of being a coaching body. You've heard me say this many times, for all of coaching, and being inclusive is another value of ours. So for us, I think we hear it, the more and more coaching grows in all its forms, we want to be offering thought leadership and looking at bringing in the knowledge from our community, from all the research that we sponsor, from all the practice, the learning we're learning. I mean, coaching is still at its infancy. It has come a long ways in 20 years, but as we know, there's no one way to be a great coach. And I think we're finding that. And this is the embrace of nature. I think we continually advise, we'd recommend that we keep very open to what comes in to coaching. And while we think while there's one hand we have to establish standards and define coaching in all its forms, we can't let that hinder us, because what's really important for us is we stay relevant. And we also need to, most importantly, the context that we're now coaching in and the world we're coaching in, we have to stay relevant. And this is not unique to the coaching industry. This is coaching. This is every corporation, every company is looking at that, the importance of that. So I think with that is not being too rigid in our values, and that we have to say, what does the world need? What do organizations need? What do our clients need? What do we need as professionals, as practitioners? And our ethos, that service ethos as a membership body, is even in the way we're moving forward, we're actually focused much more about how do we serve our diverse communities that make up the AC, and becoming, as much as we can with the resources we have, really trying to be as focused and personalized as we can, because we know that's where we're going to learn the most and how we can best serve the most as a professional body. So it is an element within this big mosaic, that we have as a professional body, that we try to understand each of those pieces and actually cater to that. So it is going back to personalization as a membership body, but more importantly, going back to understanding, we get even to another layer and another a depth of what we're learning within the coaching and in all the schools of coaching now, is this ongoing pursuit for learning, and more importantly, situational, in that who's in front of us, the clients that are in front of us, that we will learn to listen more than ever, which is that core coaching skill. Ask the questions with an open mindset, another coaching skill. And then bring in what's relevant, and whether from a practitioner perspective, if that is using, a most relevant model or technique that is fit for that individual or that team or that business conversation, or not using a tool and going back to the good old-fashioned just presence in coaching. So I think what I would say to that, and this is kind of going to some of the future, is what is emerging in the area around coaching, and some of my colleagues have mentioned it, but one of the things I think more than ever is we have to continue to listen and really be in our top form, which reinforces our need to have that ongoing development in ourselves, but also staying really relevant to our client.
Thanks, Katherine. There's a lot in there which I'd love to explore with you both briefly today, that's really sort of stimulating and quite exciting in terms of where coaching is going, but also where the Association for Coaching is going. And you mentioned staying relevant there, and you gave us some ideas about how we could perhaps do that. But what else do we need to be thinking about, do you think, Katherine and Gina, in terms of, remaining relevant in a fast changing world? I think the world's changing a lot faster today than it was 20 years ago. So, what are the key things that we need to be thinking about? Let's begin there.
So that's a very good question, because I think to stay relevant, the future focus part is actually also, you're living in the present, but you need a crystal ball almost, but you have to try and create that future as well. And actually the future, when you look at sort of things like, tech, I'm going to use tech as an example because it's very much in everybody's domain at the moment and will be for a long time. It's had a heavy impact on what we do and it will continue to have. But sometimes you look at things and think, it's just happened. And if you look at, for example, in the coaching world, you've had a lot of the online coaching platforms that have emerged. Now, they haven't just happened. Actually, they've been emerging for quite a few years. But all of a sudden, it seems that they're all there and they're all working. And that's a new era of how coaching has, some people call it been democratized. But actually, it's just a change. It means that the enabler of digital and tech has allowed change to happen that couldn't have happened if that wasn't there. So it's the passage of time, and it's the future coming all the time, and then what's next. So I remember through the COVID era that we've been through, people stopped doing 10-year or 20-year strategies, and nobody talks about that anymore, if you notice. So most people had to go to a what's next. What do we do tomorrow? What do we do the next day? Because it's uncertainty. But really, uncertainty is something that we always live with because we can't predict the future. We can actually say what could happen. So in the coaching world, we've seen a lot of change in as I mentioned, the coaching platforms. But I think what I've really liked about AC in this context is the willingness to explore and the willingness to try things. At the very beginning, when I first joined, we were approached by, it might be worth mentioning, we were approached by a company who are now called Ovida, and they had this very innovative tech solution for the coaching industry that they were developing, but they needed to actually test it. And of course, you can have all the good ideas, you can get it so far, but you need to test it on the community that you are intending to use it. So they approached AC, and Katherine said, "Oh, Gina, would you like to look at this? I have always had an interest in tech." And we were very pleased as AC to work with Ovida. We actually took things right through to proof of concept with them. But what we did was put the offer out to the AC members to say, really explain what it could do, what it could change for the coaching and their coaching, but would they like to try it? Would they like to be the first people to trial something and give the feedback? And there was such excitement. So we went through this process. People were so excited to be part of something fresh, new, that would make a change in the coaching industry, the way a coach, and basically just to let people know the quick essence of what it does. So obviously when you have a coaching online, if we were coaching now, you've got obviously the coach and the coachee, and the coaches are always looking for more indications. Obviously they're looking for facial expressions, how you're responding. So it's verbal and non-verbal cues, etc. So all of that is you're trying to do that while you're coaching as well, and listening. And so it's quite a lot to take on. Human beings, we're very clever people, and there's a limit though. So what Ovida have done is they've used artificial intelligence to pick up all the micro expressions. Who talks? How long do they talk for? How much silence is there? How much silence in a coaching session is there? So all things like this, and really something that has never been done before. We'd never seen before in the coaching industry. So that now has, it's gone sort of beyond proof of concept, but it feels as if we had a really, really good part in that, and lots of the AC members were exposed to trying something new. And it feels really good to do things like that, to be part. So it's part of the future planning and what's happening and what's coming. Again, on the UK team, we've got Claudia, who is also part of the future of coaching collaboration, working so that we know what's going on in the whole coaching world in tech. So lots of things like that. That's just one example, really, I think.
That's great. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Katherine?
Some of the changes from companies bringing in external coaches in. So we can I know it's been already talked about some of the rise of internal coaching. And we also talked about, I talked about in the first podcast about the leader coach and the AC's focus around developing leaders, as the accreditation we have for leader coach and in that side of things. But what I would say with regard to where practitioners are at, I think there's something that we're seeing in some companies due to the virtual nature of coaching and in so many, or the hybrid that's also been mentioned, where many times it's virtual and some face-to-face. People are going back to face-to-face now that we're coming out of the pandemic. Coaching has actually shortened in many times. So, where you'd have a typical hour and a half or sometimes 2-hour coaching with face-to-face, what we're getting, much more of is coaches are getting is hour coaching. And in some cases, we're even getting 45-minute coachings and actually even half-hour coaching. Now, going back to the point of being open, is just being open. I think that's really important to be adaptive and open. At least experiment with it. Just experiment. You can always say no. Just experimenting with some of these approaches, and actually being part of a project which involved with my business. There was 60 coaches, and we were doing a program over the pandemic over a year and a half. That was 45-minute coaching sessions over 5 months for a number of the leaders. in this business. And as a team of, senior exec coaches, we're saying 45 minutes. and actually, when we really reflected on it, actually the feedback was outstanding. And what we kind of realized is that when you have X amount of time, and actually the skills that you have to adapt and learn, and to be at your best to serve that coaching relationship. And there's some learning that we all learned in that as an example. And actually, it was very successful. But I think some of the summaries around this is, okay, be open, be adaptive, and then you can make the choice whether it's kind of coaching you want to do, consistently, but at least experiment with the learning you may get from that, rather than having a judgment. This is the way it always is. I know I'm consistent here. I mentioned that a little bit earlier about the importance of being agile and adaptive. But the point I wanted to make in our reflection as a group of coaches is that even though it's 45 minutes, we talked about what are the things we kind of applied or did or didn't do. And actually, some of our reflection is some of that was many years of experience of coaching to kind of get to the outcome that we did because of our ongoing pursuit of listening and learning and adapting to what's needed in that conversation. That we realizing that if we didn't have that level of experience of that training or that learning, would we have been as effective? Now, I don't know, maybe that's another experiment for a less experienced coach. So I guess there's an element of, even with the 45 minutes we had, I think we were bringing in our experience there. And even though our coaching session was 45 minutes at a time, they certainly got the value. So I think there's something here about that responsiveness and being adaptive. And I think that if anything, there's one of the concerns you asked earlier, Rob, I've heard you say in the podcast around some of the challenges. And I think that some of the coaches and many of the coaches and some of our members I talked to, we're putting the elephant in the room, or the concern is that with the democratizing of coaching, and I don't personally like that word personally, but I think I love the idea of coaching for many in all its forms and different types of coaches, really embracive of that. But I think what would concern a lot of professional coaches that go into the industry and that spend thousands and years on their ongoing development and their training is that when companies are actually saying that we really want to bring down the coaching to 6 hours of coaching, we still want to have the results, that we shouldn't bring the rates down to reflect the hours. So there's something here for me about maybe we need to continue, and it is in our role as a professional body to say to the market the different types of forms and rates and anything. We don't get involved in those commercial matters, but I guess in terms of the hope is that while the coaching in some cases might shorten, if that is one of its scenarios, and I think that can be the case, I'd like to get Gina's views on this, is that I'm hoping that doesn't make it so that professional coaches have to move out of coaching because they can't pay their mortgage. So I guess there's something there about just because it's shorter doesn't mean it's less effective or that we don't need the quality there. Gina, would you like to build on that? I'm putting out my personal view probably more than an AC view.
Yes, and I was thinking as you were talking then that quite recently I was with a group of coaches from around the world, really highly trained coaches that have invested a huge amount over the years in their own personal development to a really high standard. One of the coaches was telling me about joining a platform, to actually help with this sort of more sort of feeding the market and with more availability of coaches. But the rates were much lower, and part of that, you start to think, well, okay, is that because they're giving people work, but, that's not guaranteed any more than someone who's a highly qualified coach finding their own work. But there was a little bit of discontent, I think, and disappointment that having got all of that learning over the years and really high standard of coaching, but to go on a platform and be matched with somebody and, you're getting a standard rate for that work that is far lower than they would normally get. And I agree with you. I don't like the word democratizing, but, if it's, let's say, providing coaching at scale, is that just becoming another sort of factory farming approach to coaching? And that's, I think, what none of us really want to see. It's a professional industry. So it's a little bit, I suppose you could compare it with the legal side of things. Employing a lawyer is not something that you really want to sort of cut down on, and they earn their living. They're qualified to do that. The same with a coach. But at the same time, so would you put all of the lawyers on and say, no, we'll just take one and it'll be much cheaper to do it this way? So I think you've got to really be careful when you're looking to scale things, that you don't lose the best people and that you don't downgrade the quality of coaching. So I think that's my fear, that the market increasing in volume could mean that it's a poorer quality of coach in the end. So, and all the people that have trained and spent all that time maybe don't want to follow that method, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I hear what you're saying there, Gina and Katherine, and excellence and standards is something that we've talked about, not just in this short series, but it seems to be an underlying theme throughout a number of the different series that we've experienced through the podcast alone, let alone the wider community and offering of coaching perspectives and the digital learning output. So acknowledging the fact that actually I feel that something that the Association for Coaching is very good at, and something that it wishes to uphold, is maintaining a professional standard, but also making sure that everybody that's interested in coaching and those that are coaches are looking to continue to develop themselves. And I learned today even that this podcast series itself is a great way to remain sharp as a coach because of the learning that it offers listeners, which was quite exciting for me to hear. But with all of that in mind, Katherine, what are your thoughts in terms of what is the AC planning to do, or what is the AC doing from this point forward and into the future to support those that are interested in coaching and supporting those coaches that wish to maintain a high standard and advance the standards and excellence of coaching?
Thank you for asking that, Rob. And I just wanted to reemphasize that, going back to being a coaching body for all of coaching, how important it is for us to, and it was referenced on from one of my colleagues on the series regarding, we want coaches to start really young. Yeah. So, even really this whole area in terms of the future of seeing, it's starting to happen already, by the way, especially in some countries where coaching in schools, I mean, younger, like at a younger age. And, whether their trajectory is to someday be like external professional coaches, that's probably one aspect of the community that we embrace, is the professional coaches. And I was just referring just a little while ago when I was saying a concern around the external is that coaches who are investing, but that's not to say we really want to see coaching in as many forms across organizations and society. So just want to make sure that's a clear message, that we're not being elitist around just certain types of coaches. So I think what we're saying here, you might have heard, is whether it's just a coaching just coming in, we want to embrace them in the way that we embrace the various communities we have, and then to have them to learn and grow and embrace excellence, and whatever that is, to where they're at in their coaching journey. So if we go back to the journey, we were very, into the future, there's a lot of energy in our organization around coaching the youth. A lot of our members are starting to focusing on that in education. And we really want to look at that, that sector, before they even get into even like, a little bit later ages. And so that's something we believe we can do to continue to educate, or enable and educate the educators to do that. And it's the kind of thing you might have heard us say before, even on the first podcast series. Alex had mentioned it, my colleague, saying, we always work to people's strengths. So it's the kind of thing when there's a certain area, as long as it kind of touches coaching and our objectives into, accelerating coaching, we will say, let's really research this, and let's see how we can support these different communities within our community. So there's an element around how do we help to promote, educate, coaching lower down. And then going into the workplace, just those people just getting into the workplace, and actually that coaching approach, and even forms of it in terms of peer coaching and what coaching can bring and the coaching approach can bring, and what leaders and their bosses and their managers can do to promote more of that coaching approach. will be fantastic. And we want to continue to be supporting each of these kind of subgroups, each of these communities within our community. So that's really important to us, is to help provide fresh thinking from staying relevant to the market to help support those needs and support our members who are kind of training up some of these, as an example, training up some of the sponsors within organizations. Gina, what are you seeing?
I think what's really relevant at the moment, I was thinking of the young people that are really sort of making waves in the coaching industry. So Robin Chu is one who comes to mind, and our own, Charlie Stainforth. So Charlie has done amazing work with young people and bringing them on through coaching and introducing them to bigger companies, and having that sort of circular coaching going on where the young people coach people in business, and the people in business then coach the young people. So they're learning from each other all the time. And I've had such good things about the work that Charlie's done, and Robin equally, over the years. They've made a big difference, and we're really lucky to have Charlie on the leadership team in the UK. I'm so excited about building a shadow board, because that also, so Charlie is bringing the young people to form a shadow board to the UK leadership team. And that means that they are not only getting experience of the coaching world, but they're also putting that into place, and they'll be coaching the existing leadership team, and we'll be doing the same in reverse. And if you look at that as a model for business, if you've got the young people there learning, rather than suddenly going into a board position later on with no experience, or, it mirrors what you were saying. It really resonated when I heard you say that, Katherine, because it's actually, how do we bring the next generation along? It's really critical for coaching. And I think that's something we have a responsibility to try and bring the next generation of coaches in as soon as possible. And it's happening, which is, it's a really good start.
Yeah, it's great. I think one of the things that was very evident to me in this series, looking back over the last 20 years with the Association for Coaching, is how the batons are being passed through the generations. It was really interesting hearing some of the more experienced coaches sharing their own stories. And there's Philip Rosinski, for example, and he was sort of sharing about how when he first got into coaching, and he's been part of the AC's journey for a long time, and how now he's sort of passing the baton on to other coaches, and it's all happening through the AC's global community. And it's really exciting to hear your thoughts there and the work that's going on to support younger coaches, coaching in schools and coaching youths, and that becoming a bigger and bigger thing, with coaching being, and I think most of us would agree that, if not all of us would agree, that coaching is one of those skills that can help you to get leverage on everything else that you're good at as well, and it being a life skill in that respect as well. So with all of that in mind, and with some of the conversations that we've had over the last few weeks in mind too, and looking perhaps at a different demographic, which is that one of a global nature, and I appreciate your unique position, Gina, in terms of your involvement globally as well. But with both of you, I'd love to sort of hear your thoughts in terms of how things are evolving globally for the Association for Coaching and within our community there.
Yes, we're excited. And, you heard from the first podcast, the mission from when we set up from the very beginning was to be an international global organization. So we're really pleased. I think I might get the numbers wrong, so this could be dated, but I think the last I checked, which was a few weeks ago, was we were in over 86 countries. So it could be more than that now. So I I think our vision has always been for coaching to be completely in every country across the world. So we are on an ongoing pursuit for coaching to touch every part of the world in all its forms. And so that's always been the vision. And we're on our way. More to do by far. I'm really excited. So you would have heard from a lot of the regions and the chairs and what we've been doing. our strategy is, of course, we're not going to have regional teams on the ground in every country in the world. That wouldn't make sense. We've always been set up as a virtual organization, but what we have now, we have 20 regions. We just have our 20th region, you would have heard, in the UAE, where we launched last year in 2022. So that's our 20th region. When I say that, we have people on the ground with leadership teams that are all contributors. And where we're not having leadership teams on the ground, we're serving those 86 countries virtually. So that's just why things we've had digital learning series for, I think with Miranda, we've had those for probably over 10 years now, because we wanted to reach and serve our international community who wouldn't have access to learning or events in conferences, or may not even be able to afford, going to, one is maybe not even in their country, but also we want to be able for them to access. And that's the beauty of technology, actually, and the virtual way we're working and the global way we're working now. I get really excited when you talk anything global and international, and we have so much going on, way more to do. But on that note, I was really happy when, the biggest country in terms of population, in terms of growing population, is Africa. Is that Nigeria, Gina? You can correct me otherwise. Africa has always been, we have members in Africa, but we don't have a regional leadership team there on the ground. So Gina, do you want to talk more about your plans and vision and hopes for developing some of these areas like Africa and India?
Yes, indeed. And this is really exciting. And as Katherine knows, something very sort of close to my heart as well, because particularly I've had a big experience with great teams in Africa generally, but mostly in Kenya. One of the companies that I've worked with for quite a few years, incredible company called Career Connections, I don't mind naming them. They have seen really the introduction, they have introduced really good coaches in thousands over the years, over about 10 years. So there are thousands of accredited coaches already in Kenya and beyond, because it doesn't just stay in the borders of Kenya. So they have been absolutely amazing in supporting that growth. And it's really laid the ground for AC now to expand and to really do good work in the region. And as you say, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, so many parts of Africa, as you can probably see in the press and articles, it's really coming forward as a continent. And as Katherine said, this is no mean feat, because it's a huge continent, so many different countries and cultures. And, as coaches, we have to really respect and understand the cultures. But there are really, really good coaches. I've recently been working with a publisher in Kenya as well, who they're doing a book on women's leadership. All of these movements are happening. I think it's just a huge opportunity for AC to expand, and that's what we're really doing now. We're in talks with various people about how we can actually support this movement in the continent. So it sounds like a really big thing, and it is, but it's also, when you're working with people who are receptive, and again that they want to have change. They love, people are just saying, we really like this coaching approach, and it makes such a difference in all the different industries that are expanding rapidly in Africa and India. So India is also, I'm just talking about Africa because it's very front of mind in terms of the work at the moment, but the same with India, massive changes, very receptive and very advanced in their thinking and attitude towards coaching. So it's going to be a world. We're looking at the world in the coaching perspective, not just as a country here, a country there, and it's actually something hopefully that will unite the world even more.
Yeah. And what I'm also finding when we go out and we're speaking to, again, members and potential team members for the regional teams, across the world, as you said, Gina, and what's really refreshing is even This is the beauty of, again, being, of the internet and technology, because, I think you would have heard on other podcast series is the global nature now of coaching, especially since the pandemic when even more people are online. I mean, coaching has been online for a while now, especially in like the States, you would have heard. I mean, certain pockets, but this really forced the companies even more so. I think coaches have been there in terms of virtual coaching is not a new concept, but now companies are much more open to it. So it really does open up coaching to a global playing field in that way, even more so. And what that brings and the accessibility that brings in terms of diversity as well, in terms of when you're looking, you want a more diverse type of workforce in terms of even with their supply base. If you bring in external coaches, you can just look across the world. And I think I am seeing really pockets of excellence across the world. What's really exciting is I've had many even countries that might be getting into coaching a bit later, they're more the developing countries, is that they say we want to learn from the latest. We want the latest research. We want to learn the latest good practices. We might have just gotten into it really seriously. Now we're in our early maturity, in the early levels of maturity. But the sponsors, those coaching, and let's say in organizations or the schools, or even the coaches, is saying, I want to learn from the latest. I don't want something that's 5 years old. So, just because a country is getting into it later doesn't mean it's new. It means that they're actually, if anything, there's an eagerness to learn the latest and the best. So I just wanted to put that perspective on it. And then likewise, I think one of the things we've always said is really important as a value of the ACs is that one of our values is having a global mindset. And what I think, especially now for coaches in this global way that we're now servicing and providing services or interacting, is having that global mindset. Now, just to bring that to these different definitions, but a lot of it is those coaching views, being very open, very respectful, listening to difference, being able to adapt your thinking or your frame of reference from the new discussions that have emerged from that listening when you're looking at learning from people you don't know or you're not like. So there's correlations with the EDI agenda, but I think at a more broader level of a global mindset, I think that's an important skill set for any coach in this new world going forward, especially. Gina, you're nodding your head. Any builds on that?
What also strikes me, so what you just said there, in terms of not making assumptions really about, different areas. Because again, looking at the two countries, Africa, the continents, but, the continent of Africa and India are both very ahead technically, technologically, they are really ahead, and they haven't also got some of the history that we've got and the time it takes us to get something to market. So they're much more agile and faster to bring something into fruition. And I've really noticed that. So again, we're learning as well. So we're all learning together. And that's more powerful than anything, because with coaching, you should never assume, as you say, you shouldn't assume that this is how it is. We've all got to learn together and co-create. So that's the spirit, I think, of what the AC are doing. We're co-creating with people who are receptive, want to have the same objectives and want to achieve together, and again, create a bigger community.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And in my cross-cultural training over the years, and I'm not an optimist by nature, but, the view I have, and I think it's inherent across the AC, is what are the strengths that you can learn from that culture? What's the difference, but what can you embrace? What's the uniquenesses that you can actually embrace and learn from? And then when we start to bring that all together, it's really a beautiful thing. So I just love all the learning when you're with difference and you're with all this. I think it's going to raise coaching to a whole other level the more global we go.
There's some lovely thoughts and themes there, Gina and Katherine. Thank you for those. I love these ideas of co-creation and learning together, and this sort of cross-cultural knowledge sharing and learning and advancement. So doing this, this forward movement as a global community sounds very exciting indeed. So I think with all of that in mind, and I'm surprised at how quickly the time has gone in our conversation today, I'm curious to know what your hopes are individually for coaching for the future, both within the Association for Coaching itself, obviously as a large community body and as an organisation, but also just for coaching too. I'm curious as to what your hopes and thoughts are looking forward from this point.
Coaching is the default style for leadership across organizations globally. Every person in a company, whether that's a large multinational to an SME to a not-for-profit, I'm talking when I say corporate or company, I'm meaning organizations out there. So every person in a company has coaching, has access to coaching in some way. That can be internally, it can be externally, in all its forms of coaching. That everyone in that organization has access to a coaching style or a coaching approach.
I think that the essence of coaching the future for the AC is also that we will reflect on the past and we will create the future. The goal would be to see, with every organisation in the world, having a coaching culture established. So that's, I think, a future goal. It's a big goal, but why not? We should look for something at that level, I think. Let's have coaching across the world in every organisation.
Absolutely. And let's add to that, if we've got this wish list, which would be, my hope would be that we're seeing coaching across, not just across the universities as a curriculum. It's already happening already in terms of coaching degrees and such. But coaching is happening. But I'd like to see it more universal across the different academic institutions, but also downwards into the schools. Let's see coaching skills as a curriculum in schools, and what role can the AC play in that? That would be wonderful if we can see that multiplied in many ways.
Great. As we bring our conversation today to a close, have you got any final thoughts that you would like to share with our listener in terms of the future of coaching, reflecting on the series, celebrating 20 years of the Association for Coaching? Is there anything you'd like to offer our listener as a parting thought from our conversation today?
I think that what has struck me about this particular podcast, is that there is so much positivity at the AC. There is so much to look forward to. We're going forward, definitely. We are very future focused at the AC, and we want to lift everybody up and everybody together to flourish and to be the best coaches and actually get the best out of that for themselves, their clients, their families. And I think actually it's a very positive outlook, I think, is really how I'd like to end and say that it's, there's a lot going on in the world, but I think there's a lot of positivity we can have. And we hope that coaching can have a really positive influence globally, as we've said.
I echo that. Well said, Gina. I echo all of that. And I'm sure it's come through. I've seen it and heard it from everyone. And this element of community in AC, that really speaks closely to our hearts in terms of having a community that you can go. It is a lonely place. It can be a lonely place. And more than ever, we need connection and human connection. So it really is wonderful to have where people can connect and have that sense of community and knowledge share, being able to be vulnerable as you continue to learn, and all those things, the community it brings. So I think that's really, really important. And I think my hope would be too that more and more people go into coaching, because so often we get people are thinking about there's this whole exit of war for talent, and I think coaching can help people get more meaning within their work, and coaching can certainly help people stay in their jobs, but also just support them to change as well and transition. So coaching is still at its I still think we're upgoing. I said this 10, 15 years ago, is coaching is still in its infancy. I think we still are really on that early part of the growth curve still. So, it's certainly not mature. It's on the up. It has so much more to do. We have more to do. And what really excites us in the AC when we looked at our imagery of what we represent is this rippling effect. We know that really people get what that means by rippling effect. And so we love that. How do we continue to be the best that we can be and actually be the enablers and to actually help create those ripples at an individual level, at an organizational level, a societal level. And what that brings, and I think what's maybe not talked about enough, but we know it, the people that are coaches or coaching know it, is we get as much out of it as the client or those on the receiver's end. And I think those who are not into coaching yet, and you just start to get a sense of it, and you're like, this is so fulfilling. And so I think there's a message here. My hope as well would be we continue to serve our communities and actually be open and grow and expand and go global and add value, all those things what we're about. And what that can bring, the rippling effects that can bring in society, the inspiration, the sense of community and connections and partnerships that brings. And I hope, too, that more people go into coaching, because the more the people that go into, and it's sustainable. We were speaking earlier about a slight concern if people can't make a living out of it. We got to keep an eye on that. But I think there is, if we can continue to encourage people, stay inspired. For me, the goal, end game, in addition to the making an impact and making a contribution, is that coaching's sustainable. So I guess my hope here is that not only are we making that impact, is that it continues to thrive way beyond our lifetime in whatever form that is, so that snowballing effect continues. So I'm just so excited that we're part of it, and it's a real gift to be able to work with everyone. And Rob, I'd like to thank you for your time and your diligence, and you and the team, because they've been so professional, and I know that it's been fantastic. We've had such great feedback, and I know so many people. I've already had so many comments. People have really enjoyed the series. So thank you.
That's great. Thanks ever so much for those sentiments, Katherine, and those final thoughts. I think that's a lovely place to end this series celebrating 20 years of the Association for Coaching, which is a remarkable achievement, and looking forward to many more decades of coaching and beyond. So Gina and Katherine, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks for listening to another podcast by the Association for Coaching. I'm Rob Lawrence. For 20 years, the AC's purpose has been to inspire and champion coaching excellence, advance the coaching profession, and make a sustainable difference to individuals, organisations, and societies worldwide. To find out more about the Association for Coaching and our member benefits, follow us on LinkedIn or explore our website at associationforcoaching.com. You can keep up to date with our latest podcast episodes, enjoy the wealth of digital learning offerings, and gain insights from our Coaching Perspectives magazine.